Welcome back to the Cartoonist Studio on this, the Halloween special. Today, we'll be drawing a bunch of cartoons on a spooky level. And let's face it, what Halloween video wouldn't be complete without a few spooky props. Right, let's get drawing, shall we? So, what is this Halloween special about? And why this strange green glow? Well, this is my studio, which regular visitors to the channel know it inside out. And over the years, I've been in this house for, I'd say about 24 years, 25 years. And this has always been my studio, and it's on the top floor of the house. The spooky part, shall we say. And some weird things have happened in this room. More sensations than anything else. You just a sudden feeling of uneasiness, or the air has become very heavy. I've never experienced cold patches yet, but weird stuff that I can't explain. Maybe you can, I don't know, but I've never been able to explain it. So I'm drawing it in here tonight. I'm drawing the cartoons. Don't worry about the clarity of the pictures because I've got my lamp over here, trusty lamp, and that's got a daylight setting on it, so it'll be fine. That will be perfectly clear. But I've also got some cameras set up in different parts of the house. There's been certain parts of the house that have experienced more than normal, shall we say. And that is on the landing, the floor below, and the kitchen, obviously on the ground floor. So I've got cameras set up in both those places, and we should be going periodically between those places and here. And when it comes to the actual cartoons themselves, when I'm drawing them, I'm going to be telling you some of the unusual things that have happened to me in my life. Things that I can't quite explain. You may be able to explain them, as I said before. And if you can, leave your explanations in the comments section below. And we'll all have a good chat about it. Right, this is a cartoonist channel. So what are the cartoons going to be about? Well, I'm giving you 3 cartoons this week. Not the normal one, 3. And I'm going to be drawing my favourite characters from the horror genre, shall we say, over the period of time going right back into the 1930s. And I'm going to be drawing Frankenstein, I'm going to be drawing the Mummy, and the Wolfman, or Werewolf, or Lycanthrope, however you want to pronounce it. So those 3 cartoons, zooming around the house, seeing what's going on, finding out if anything happens in this room whilst I'm doing it, anything strange happens, any anomalies, anything like that. And let's have ourselves a jolly good Halloween special, shall we? Yes, let's do that. And whilst we're doing that, let's go and draw the first one, which will be Frankenstein. Okay, so the first story is more of an experience, I would say. What happened, and we're going back probably 15, 16 years ago. And I had a friend who'd come round to stay with her daughter. And she was what you might call a sensitive, I think is what she called herself. She had had a horrific illness in her youth, and she'd managed to get better from it, which was fantastic. But she was left with this feeling that she couldn't quite understand. And in her own words, she started to have experiences with demons. Her words, not mine. And as a result, she found God, became deeply religious, and had an exorcism. Seemed to clear her of all of her problems, all of her dark thoughts and happenings. But she was left with this residual power, once again, as she puts it. And this residual power allowed her to see things. And she was around my house the one day, And she came downstairs. She'd gone upstairs to the toilet. She'd come downstairs and she said, "There's a little old lady that lives in the wallpaper." I said, "What, in the wallpaper?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Some kind of a thin ghost." She said, No. She lives in the wall, but she said she lives in the wallpaper. That's the best way she can describe it. And she comes out and I can see her. I said, "Is she there now?" She goes, "No, you won't be able to see her. I can see her. So she's no harm." So what, does she just wander around the house? And then she said, "No, she can't wander around the house. She lives on the landing and she can go up to every room, but she can't go into the, like, she can't go into the one bedroom, she can't go into the second bedroom, she can't go into the bathroom. She can go up and down the stairs, but that's all she can do." So I went upstairs and I went in the bedroom and I sort of said, "What, is she here now?" And she turned. She goes, "No, she's standing in the doorway, just looking at you." I said, "Angry?" She said, "No, she's just looking at you." And I find that kind of spooky. I really found that unnerving. So I said, "Well, what does she do?" She goes, "Oh, no, she's okay. It's just that when anything changes in the house, if you decorate it or if someone new moves in, someone new moves into the house or different people start turning up, it kind of agitates her. She doesn't get angry. She doesn't throw things around. She's just there. It brings her out of the wallpaper. The rest of the time, she'll just go back into the wallpaper and that's where she'll stay." And she sort of went home later on that day, and I was left. And I'd had my kids over the weekend, and they also went home to their mother. And I was thinking, I think this thing over. And for the next few weeks, it seemed fine. I thought I'd have a bad night that night, thinking, "Oh my God, there's a ghost in the doorway watching me. How weird!" But it turns out that nothing happened. And then the one day I was coming down from the studio and I felt a finger run down my spine, and it was unmistakable. It was a finger. And I knew exactly who it was. From that point of this, there have been a few times when the little lady's come out, or rather I've sensed that she's been out. She usually does the thing of just stroking the finger down my back. Nothing hard, nothing horrible, nothing cruel, nothing hurt me. Just letting me know that she's back out of the wallpaper. And wandering around the landing. Well, hope you enjoyed that, the first one. So now I guess we should go around to the cameras and see what's going on around the house. Now, full disclosure, I'm filming all the studio bits in one segment. The cameras are downstairs doing what they're doing, and I'll go back and have a look at them later on and then splice it all together into a video, which is pretty much how the big boys and girls do it, not the idiots on this channel. but I'm going to have an attempt at being grown up, and that's what's going to happen. So I've got no idea what's going on down there. That's the gist of it all. So we'll go and have a look at those now, and we'll come back for the next drawing. Okay, we're back. Like I say, no idea what's going on down there. Maybe nothing, maybe something. It's all a bit of Halloween fun. That's all it is, just a bit of fun. So let's go on to the second picture, which is going to be the Wolfman, I think. We'll do the Wolfman, shall we? Yes, let's do that. Now, this next tale took place when I was either 20 or 21. And it was at the apartments of the lady who eventually went on to become my first wife. I'd been round there that evening and we'd gone to bed, and I suppose it'd be some point during the middle of the night. I don't know exactly what the time was. I don't remember looking at the clock when I woke up. But I did wake up either turning over or something, and as I turned over, something caught my eye. Now, as I've said, it was in the middle of the night, so it was dark, but there was something even darker in the corner of the room. And as my brain slowly took it in, I opened my eyes and looked down there again. And it was a shape. It was a kind of a ball of dark, but it appeared to be slightly moving. Not much, just a little. And it could have been the wooziness of just waking up, your eyes trying to adjust to the dark. I don't know. And I was just convincing myself that this is what it was, when the shape, for all intents and purposes, stood up. And it started to coalesce into an actual uniform shape. It had kind of powerful shoulders and long arms, but it was still just a dark shape, not a ball of gas or swirling mist or anything. It was now turning into what felt like a solid shape, or looked like a solid shape. Slowly it started to move towards me, and as it got closer, the area that would have been, I suppose, its head area, two little red slits appeared. These I took to be its eyes. And then these arms came out, these huge shoulders. They appeared to be hairy. I don't know whether they were, but they felt like they were probably hairy. And these two hands just came down and held my shoulders down. I couldn't move. I tried desperately to wriggle and to move, but the harder I tried, the more it just kept me there in place. And I couldn't see a mouth move or anything, but I could almost hear it sort of willing me to stay where I was. It was just moving its head slowly from side to side. And then, as soon as it started, it stopped. When I stopped struggling, it just slowly moved its hands, put its arms down by its side, moved back, and then just kind of disappeared, just moved away. And it wasn't until after it had gone that I realized that I didn't feel there was any threat there. It was scary. God, it was scary. But I didn't feel like there was an implied threat afterwards. It wasn't until afterwards that I felt this. But the weirdest part was, because my mind was thinking, it must have been a dream. I must have just woken up. And I've come out of a nightmare, but I've had the dream that I've woken up, seen this, and that's part of the nightmare. And then I sort of took a sigh, and I turned over, and there was my future wife looking at me, eyes wide open, and she just said, "I saw the whole thing." You have no idea how freaky something like that is to hear. But of course, that wasn't the only thing that happened around about that time. There was a variety of things that had happened to me. I'd not long moved from the city of Birmingham and was living out in the countryside, in the town that I live in now. But at the time I was living with my parents, and we were right out in the countryside, and we were very unfamiliar with the ways of the countryside. So we did what all city people did when we moved to the countryside, is we bought a lot of books on animals and wildlife in the countryside, and how to recognize it, and how to recognize various plants, things you could eat, things you can't eat, mushrooms, toadstools, that sort of stuff. And I remember walking the dog up to get the milk one night. It was a summer's evening, and the farm was just around the corner. It was very idyllic. We were around the corner, and the farmer was milking his cattle. And what he'd do is he'd go and get a big scoop, and we'd take the milk fresh out of the big cylinder that was collecting it, and he'd pour it into this milk churn that I had, and I'd go back with it. So it was either me who would do it, my father, my mother, or my sister. We'd go up there, and it was a short walk. It was very pleasant, and we were getting fresh milk, literally direct from the cows. You're not allowed to do it anymore. Health and safety put a stop to all that healthy stuff. They won't allow you to do it. And the farm doesn't exist anymore anyway. But anyway, one summer's evening, I walked up there with the dog, and the dog saw something moved in the bushes, and the dog sort of went crazy. I thought it was probably a squirrel or a rabbit. But this animal sort of leapt out of the bushes, went across the road, over the fence, and connected with this big thick tree, like an ash tree or an elm tree or something. And it scuttled up this tree just out of sight, or just out of reach, shall we say, of the dog. The dog was barking and howling and yapping and yipping. I looked up and I sort of calmed the dog down. I looked up this thing and I thought, I wonder what that is. It was it had the body of a big house cat. It had like a duckbill platypus tail, but it wasn't hairless. It was quite hairy. It had sort of stripes on it, which was, of course, the cat appearance, and was just looking down at the dog. It had sort of quite pronounced claws on its feet, and it was looking down at the dog. And eventually, I got the dog to calm down, and I just went off thinking it was some kind of local animal. Just because I'd never seen it, didn't know what it was. So I went off up to the farm, got the milk, came back, and whatever it was that was up the tree had gone. Didn't think much else of it. Came back to the house, told my parents, we got the book out, we thumbed through it. We couldn't find this animal anywhere. Couldn't find it in any of the books. I thought that was a bit strange, but didn't think much else of it. Turned the TV on, and the evening just progressed. And cut forward about 7 years later, and I buy a book called Arthur C. Clarke's Strange and Mysterious World. And I'm flicking through it, and all of a sudden I come across this creature. I think it's called a thylacine, and it actually went out of existence. I think it was quoted about 100,000 years ago it became extinct. But the Brecon Beacons, under whose shadow I live, is a place renowned for a lot of strange things and creatures that live up there. I've heard some pretty weird tales. Right, that's that one done. Hope you enjoyed the Wolfman. I loved the Wolfman. I preferred him when it was Lon Chaney Jr. Chaney? Chaney? I'm not sure whether I'm pronouncing that correctly or not, but I loved the movies. There was no blood, guts, and gore like you get in the modern movies nowadays, which are fine. But in the black and whites, it was more about the suspense and the build-up of fear. I absolutely loved that part of it. Really did send me round the back of the sofa to hide. Okay, right. So before we go on to the final one, let's go and have another look at the camera, see if anything's going on, shall we? Right, we're back. Anything happen? I don't know. Like I said, I'll find out later on. Hopefully we captured something, but it's just a bit of Halloween fun. Okay, so now on to the final one, which is going to be, if I remember right, it's going to be the mummy. A lot of bandages hanging around. What could possibly go wrong with that? Let's go and find out how I can mess that one up, shall we? Now, these next set of tales actually took place in somewhere that I worked, which was an old hotel called the Castle Hotel, and it was built on the grounds of an actual medieval castle. I mean, it even had the original tower stuck to the side of it, and part of the building there was a couple of bars, and one of the bars was called the Castle Bar, and that was built against the walls of the original castle, and that room was just something else. I remember the once I was generally on my own there at night time. There were a few times I worked with another night porter, but for most of it I was on my own, and the ballroom was right next to the Castle Bar. Castle Bar just had the doorways off the ballroom, and you were in there. But come around about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, there's absolutely no one in there. The guests are asleep. It's just you wandering around there in the complete peace and quiet. And you have no idea how eerie peace and quiet can be. So I was in the ballroom the one night, and I felt slightly uneasy. You usually do. And I could sense something in the room. You just got to sense it after a while. It was probably in my mind. No doubt it was in my mind. You hear so many ghost stories. But I was feeling a little bit uneasy. And they had these incredible mirrors, these huge, almost ceiling to floor mirrors in there. And it was I can imagine it was a ballroom, so it was a very tall room, so the mirrors were huge. And they were thinking of just getting rid of them all. And I thought, surely I can sell those. So I asked the bosses, and they said, yeah, we're just going to scrap them. We're going to put them in the skip. So I thought, right, I'll take photos of them now, and then I'll look onto eBay or something like that and see if I can find an equivalent, get a price, and make a few pounds. So I took the photos, thought nothing else of it, and went off and carried on my business. The next day, I looked at the photos, and in the corner of the photos, you could see the castle bar door closed and dark, and obviously all the lights switched off. And I pinched at the door to enlarge it. I knew what I was going to see. Even the second I started to pinch it, I knew what I was going to see. And I enlarged it, and there, staring out at me, were no less than 5 faces. The next day, I showed it to people I work with. I just showed them the picture, and they said, oh my God, look at those faces. they were there, the faces were there. Unfortunately, I've lost the picture. Strange thing is, I don't ever remember deleting them. Another occasion, probably a few months further on from there, another one of my jobs is when you've done all the bits and pieces you have to do throughout the night, taking stuff down, resetting up for more meetings or parties or whatever it is you had to do that was in the night porter's book. The end of the night consisted of you sweeping and mopping and then setting up for breakfast. And that involved bringing all the cereals out in their various baskets and boxes and putting the milk, the juices, and you know how it goes. You've been to a hotel, you've seen the stuff laid out there. The night porter puts that out the night before. So this would have been probably around about 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30. I'd finished everything a little bit early, so I thought I'll just put the dry breakfast stuff out, the cereals. I won't put the milks out and what have you, but just the cereals. So I have to go into this small room, which is just annexed off the main area where you eat, the main restaurant area where you have the breakfasts. So I bring the basket in, and you suddenly become aware. It's like a sixth sense. It's almost like you think someone's going to walk into the room, and invariably it's just a guest that's come downstairs and they're a bit confused. They've forgotten something or they locked themselves out of the room. A lot of guests will get up to go to the toilet at night, go to the toilet, come out, think they're at home, turn left when they should turn right, and go out of the room, close the door, and find themselves standing in the hallway with no way of getting back in. So quite often you see them coming downstairs saying, I've locked myself out of my room. So I felt that something was about to come around the corner. And I just turned round, and the only light in that room, there's no point putting the lights on, it's dark, the only light coming from that room was coming from the breakfast room area where we keep all the stuff. And out of there, I actually saw a shape. It was kind of rectangular, best way I can describe it. And it was off the ground, and it was moving at probably about 4.5 miles an hour. The reason I know that is because the human being travels at 2.5 to 3 miles an hour. So it was going not double, but not far off double the speed that we do. It had no shape, it had no arms, it had no head, nothing. It was just a rectangular shape, and I watched it. I watched it go across the room, and when it or I was absolutely sure that I wasn't seeing something, that's when it just faded away and just disappeared. I don't mean it faded because it went through a wall, it just faded away and disappeared. And I stood there thinking, what now? But by far the most eerie thing that has ever happened to me at that place, and there's been plenty of weird things, but the most eerie thing that's ever happened to me, and a couple of people have mentioned it, is the little girl. That's awful. You hear her giggle once, and she's always in the next room. So when you go to it, she's in the next room. You go to that room, she's in that next room. You never see her. She's just giggling. She's just over the other side of the wall, just around the corner from where you are. That is the freakiest sound at 4 o'clock in the morning when everything else is asleep. Then, of course, there's the pots and pans that just drop from nowhere. No reason why they do it. They drop. Knives and forks come out of their trays onto the floor. And then there was the night of the spiders. Oh my God, I do not like spiders. This one particular night, it was not long after I discovered the faces in the door, and they were okay. They don't seem to cause any trouble. They just seem to be looking out. Although I never actually saw them physically, I only ever saw them in the photo. They just seemed to be looking out. They didn't seem to be angry or anything like that. But then something happened. Another spirit or something would follow me, and it was like you could feel it. You could almost feel its breath on your neck. I couldn't feel it, but it was like you could. And I get to a certain part of the pub behind the bar, and it came no further. So it was almost like it couldn't go any further than there. But anything beyond that point, anything to that point and before it, it's like I was fair game. And unfortunately, that was where all the sandwich making stuff was. It's where all the breakfast things were. Everything I needed was in that area. And this damn thing would follow me everywhere. And I was terrified. And then the one night, it just decided to drop spiders on me. Wherever I walked, a spider would drop on my head. Now, this is not normal. This doesn't happen. Spiders, you might have one, but there must have been about a dozen throughout the night. Little spiders dropping on my head all the time, down my back, everywhere. That was probably the worst night I've ever spent in the hotel with that ghost. Okay, that's it. That's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to go downstairs now and check on the cameras to see if anything happened there. And yeah, thank you very much once again for your time. I really do appreciate it. And I hope to see you on the next one when we'll be getting back to the normal sort of rubbish that we get up to. So in the meantime, have a great fortnight and I will see you in a couple of weeks. And until then, bye-bye for now.
Boom!